Hi, this is Jordan Moorhead, and this is the Austin Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today we have Karina and Levi Seidel, who are going to come on and tell us all about their experience with small multifamily in Austin, doing some flips, doing some SDR in Austin, and how they've structured all that with partnerships and working together. Hey, how are you guys doing?
Hey, Jordan.
Hey.
Doing well. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I know I think we've been talking for a few years on Bigger Pockets and like at meetups around town here.
Yeah.
But I know you guys have been working hard on real estate here in Austin.
Yeah, no, believe it or not, but you were actually our, I believe, very first broker that we met when we moved to Austin. So I still remember we met at the Starbucks. You were very knowledgeable, knew a lot about Austin area.
2 years ago, right?
About 2 years ago.
That's awesome.
Probably actually 2020,
Yeah, you guys have done a lot in 2 years. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Before we dive too much into that, I'm going to get the most important question we ask here out of the way. What's your favorite restaurant in Austin?
So I actually still didn't find the one I absolutely love, but with that said, I do have a cocktail bar I really like.
Cool.
It's called Tipsy Alchemist.
Yeah, Tipsy Alchemist.
Yeah, really good place, really good atmosphere, and but yeah, still looking for a restaurant.
Yeah, I'd say mine's probably like a cop-out answer, but I really like wings, and so I'm gonna go with like Wingstop or Buffalo Wild Wings just because I really like wings. I'm always mango habanero, always all flats. So it's a cheat of an answer, but that's what I'll go with.
No, Wingstop's got good wings. I like the lemon pepper wings they have there are really good.
Yeah.
That's a good one for me too. I try to watch the carbs, and eating wings, no carbs, you're good to go.
Yeah, well, that's what I'll use as my justification moving forward.
I'll take it. Yeah, we can take it. So, I know you guys are working hard with small multifamily, the value add stuff here in the Austin area and other areas too. Could you talk more about that and tell us why you chose to start with small multifamily value add?
Yeah, I'd say that the reason why we started with small multifamily was just because when we initially started out looking at real estate and investing in real estate, we saw there was a lot of different places you could go, a lot of different places you could invest, and small multifamily seemed like a good starting point for us. We kind of skipped over the single family because we were looking for something that had cash flow. We started out learning from Brandon Turner and other similar minds like that. And so they had always talked about cash flow being king and, the cash on cash return. And so whenever we dove in, we didn't want to, mess with the commercial space. We felt like we didn't, have the experience and knowledge. So we went right with the multifamily. We did the value add so we could force some appreciation, and then we either would flip them and sell them, or we turn them into rentals with a reasonable return.
Okay, so I know you flipped some and then you held some, and then you also talked about you were going to do STR on some. So how do you determine, hey, this is one I'm going to hold, or hey, this is one I'm going to flip, or maybe this one I'm going to do an STR on? What changes for you in each of those?
Yeah, that's a good question.
What's your criteria for saying, hey, this is a hold?
A lot of them, I think the majority of the ones, they started out as holds, but then in some instances we kind of pivoted because of the situation. So for example, we started out investing in the Austin area, and then we hopped off hey, let's check out St. Petersburg, Florida. And so we went over there and bought a duplex in a really rough neighborhood. We weren't familiar with exactly how rough it was. We bought it sight unseen. We had a really hard time dealing with contractors. It was a really rundown property. And by the time we actually got it rented, I think we ended up going through like 3 or 4 leases before we actually got one person who ended up, needing to be evicted. And so that one just kind of ended up being more work than it was worth. And so, just looking at the numbers over a shorter period of time, like 6 months, we were like, hey, like, let's exit this.
I think we so our first couple of deals were actually in Killeen and Copper Cove area, so about an hour and a half north of Austin, and those were both fourplexes, and it just made sense to hold them as long-term holds, a really great cash flow, and we actually experienced really good appreciation where I guess everyone did, but on those deals.
Yeah.
But we did I guess 2 flips in Austin area. Actually, one of them we wish we kept. It was in Round Rock. It was also a duplex that we renovated. We did a condo conversion. That's where you divide a duplex into 2 separate condos, and we sold them separately to get a higher ARV. But it would have been a great long-term hold, but we made really good money on that one, and I think that was our back then we didn't know we could use private money and partner with other people, so that was the motivation for that one, just to get some extra cash in so we can get our next deal. And with the current STR, it was actually never a plan to turn it into short-term rental. It's just it was another duplex that we did a condo regime on. We sold one right. Well, it was already in the midst of a market correction that we're currently experiencing, and the second unit unfortunately weren't as lucky to sell for what we wanted to sell it for. So we opted to refi it and turn it into short-term rental, which numbers make sense, and it's an exit strategy. It's not what we wanted, but that's just a lesson that's always important to have a backup plan, and yeah, that's what we're doing.
No,
And I'd say we always, going into these, we always had like an understanding of them as potentially being rentals or potential flips kind of going in. Some of them we had the mindset of having them as rentals, but even on the flips, we'd always kept that rental as she said, like as an exit scenario if needed.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I mean, it sounds like you have such a good understanding of real estate investing and those backup strategies and all that kind of stuff. And that's really cool. And I think, when you're swinging for the fences, obviously like you're trying to flip a property, make a big profit or something like that, you need to have a backup strategy. So how did you get started being interested in real estate investing, and what did you do to educate yourself to learn all this? Because this all sounds like, oh, they know all this stuff, but how'd you learn it?
Yeah.
So we actually started thinking about real estate shortly after graduating college. We both got jobs at Amazon, and we thought everything was great. We made it. We making good salaries. We're now living in sunny Santa Barbara, paying I think 3,000 in rent for like 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, and realizing, well, we're never gonna be financially free like this. And at that time, we started thinking, okay, what other avenues can we explore for making extra income? We thought about selling stuff on Amazon. We thought about other things, and then kind of real estate was always in the back of our heads, and we, like probably a lot of investors, just stumbled on Bigger Pockets. We started listening to podcasts, reading books, finally analyzing our first deal. And the hardest thing was probably making that step of doing our first deal, and then after doing that deal we realized, wow, this is the way. And shortly after that, we quit our jobs at Amazon. I was there for maybe 8 months. I didn't like it. He was there for maybe
about a year and a half.
Yeah. And we just saw cash flow, the passive cash flow. That's the beauty of it, and also the appreciation of the real estate. And of course, it has it's cyclical. And right now, we're seeing some not as great times, but so yeah, I guess that was the motivation of the the passive income, of the time, having control of your time, and not working for a man. And I don't know if you had anything to add.
Yeah, no, I think she pretty much touched on it. I think another catalyst was like after we had moved to Santa Barbara, we kind of got settled in and things felt comfortable, and we went out on the weekends and we bought the things we wanted to, but we started to like have conversations about what actually mattered to us, how much money we wanted to make, and then ultimately why we even wanted to make money.
Yeah.
And I think, right, and so like we ultimately were like, well, there's kind of a roof on us where we are. And I think our mindset changed from thinking that we had it all and we were at the top, and we figured it out, to kind of being like, we're a little bit closer to the bottom than I think we were initially thinking.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't as great. And there was a ceiling on us.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at potential opportunities in our current route, even if we were to hop from different companies, there was always going to be this low ceiling. And I think we saw real estate as a means of generating wealth and eventually moving to a point where we could minimize the amount of time we have to put in to continue creating this wealth and maintaining this wealth,
Mm-hmm.
to actually live the life we want to live and enjoy the quality that we desired ultimately.
No, I love that. You talked about ceiling, like your ceiling only goes up at the rate that you get promoted or get a raise at work too, where in real estate, you can jump up levels overnight. You don't have to climb the stairs. You can go 5 levels up overnight and just say, oh, I'm doing this now. Like, we talked about residential to commercial. You can go from 1 unit or even single family to fourplex. You're buying 1 unit at a time. You say, I'm going to buy fourplexes now. And you're buying 4 units at a time. You can scale up so much quicker. And that's really cool. You can also build something for the future. I mean, in your job, if you for some reason can't work your job next year, maybe you got unemployment for 6 months. I think that's what it is. But after that, you're out of luck. What are you going to do? Or if you buy a rental property, as long as you maintain that rental property and take care of it and manage it, you've got it forever. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
completely
such a
agree.
cool way.
Yeah, that's definitely one of like the freedoms as well. I mean, even like with like our first couple of deals, like I think we've already reached a point where like, we're making some passive income, and we certainly haven't reached the quality of life we want, but like even at our current income, if we were to, be unable to work, like we would never, be have to go back to a 9 to 5 or to some kind of
Mhm.
corporate job. We would gladly live below our means, versus going back and working in a role you are not actually satisfied with.
That's awesome. So you talked about analyzing deals too. So I just out of curiosity, we used to talk about, or you used to hear on podcasts all the time, like Bigger Pockets back in the day. They talked about, oh, analyze this number of deals before you buy your first deal, or the first thing you do is start analyzing deals. I feel like that's been lost. So how many deals did y'all analyze before you bought your first one? A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. I can't even put a number on it, but
Just a
Yeah,
guess, like
probably a guess,
50.
maybe like somewhere between 50 to 100 deals, probably.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Me too. And you talked about the first deal was kind of the hardest deal, and it sounds like they've gotten progressively easier since that first deal. But I think that's so hard for so many people to realize that not every deal is going to be near as hard as that first deal. What was the biggest roadblock for you in that first deal? Like what was it that kept you from getting that first deal done?
I think what made it hard, not the deal itself. The deal itself actually went pretty smoothly because we found a great contractor, we found a great realtor,
Mhm.
we had a good team behind us. What
Mhm.
made the deal hard is just making that first step of like, okay, we're doing it. We analyzed enough deals, we listened to enough podcasts, we read enough books, like we just gotta do it. And I think that's the hardest step you can take, but it's the most important step you will make in your real estate career. It's just starting. So with that said, we it was the first deal was a fourplex. There were some things we didn't expect, like how two of the apartments were flooded by previous tenants, and we were just like these two new investors. Like, but again, we just had a good team with us from the from the get-go, and I think that's what made a big difference on making that deal stress-free. And that's, I guess, another lesson, that's always have good people with you, good teammates who will advise you on how to do things, or knowledgeable people. So but yeah, the deal itself was good overall. It was just that first step is kind of the fear of, okay, what if we fail, what if it doesn't go as planned? It's like, well, then just don't do real estate then. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think that mental block is so important to get over that first deal. It's so that's the hard part, like you're talking about, Karina. The the processes of the first deal are not hard, but getting past your fear and anxiety of something going horribly wrong in the first deal, it seems so insurmountable for a while. Once you do it, you're like, oh, that was no big deal. It was like, you're a kid and you're about to go down the slide or something. You're so scared of going down the slide, or going on a roller coaster, and it's such a big deal. And then you go on that roller coaster and you're like, oh, I can do that 100 times, no problem. But that first ride, you're like, oh my gosh, that's gonna be just terrifying.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I think we were, I'd say, blessed to have entered the market like shortly after COVID had come about. And I think that was like kind of right before everything really took its big spike in terms of like medium home prices. And so thankfully we had we didn't know it, we unknowingly had, this cushion of substantial market growth that would be happening over the next 2 years. Yeah, which also, in the hindsight, I think, looking back, I wish we had just bought everything. Like anything would have been fine, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you being in the market these last 2 years, it's easy for us to say, oh, the good times have passed and blah blah blah, but really the good times are always, like Karina, you mentioned, things are cyclical. Now we're in kind of a lull, and I think it's a great time to buy real estate at good values if you've got the ability to do so, and then ride it on the way up. But that real estate is so interesting because it's not where you buy low, sell high. That's not the only way to make money. We've talked a lot about in this episode of cash flow and passive income. You can buy real estate right anytime and make cash flow and passive income, and then it's still paying itself off. And then you're still getting some appreciation. You're still getting some loan pay down and depreciation. I'm sure you guys have pretty favorable tax treatment as real estate investors with all the great stuff that we get to take advantage of. So it's exciting, but at the same time, it's a little slow and boring. And that's what I love about it personally.
Yeah, I think it's also important to remember that, like, real estate, like, these are like most of them are long-term assets, like people mention like timing the market, like, these really aren't stocks. Like, you don't come in and buy low, so high. So it's like, if you like think about these assets over like longer periods of time, you really lose a lot of, that risk associated with like oh, I bought it in the market, dipped 20K, I'm, out of luck. Like, just as long as you set it up such that you have the means to hang on to this for a time period such that is negated and eventually, entirely offset, and you end up making money on it. So I think looking at it with a longer horizon and averaging these returns out over longer periods, depending on your strategy, can really help, normalize, I think, a lot of that concern.
Yeah. And that's why we're buying cash flowing assets that we have the means to hold on to, like you're talking about. So I think that's a good way to look at it, is how do I buy something that like you guys talked about, we don't just have one exit strategy where we can hold on to it long term, because long term almost everything works. But You know, if your flip doesn't work out and you don't have any backup plans, then you end up in trouble, and that's not fun.
Yeah, and I think that's the danger. Like as long as you're not putting yourself in a position where you don't have those exit clauses where you end up becoming insolvent, you can't pay your mortgage.
Mhm.
Once you get out of that domain, it really becomes a game of optimization. It's, man, this property only had a 15% return. This one only had a 7. This one had a 30. I think, you begin to look at it over how can I optimize and maximize my returns versus, oh, am I going to make or break my financial portfolio? I think a lot of those notions begin to disappear once you enter a steady state.
Yeah, over a longer period of time. Can we talk about any mistakes you've made? So I like to help our listeners understand what not to do, and I think that's so important. So for me, I always go back to due diligence, making sure I do the right due diligence and making sure I have the right partners, things like that. But can you tell our listeners about a mistake you've made, or what the biggest mistake you've made is?
Yeah, I think I'll just start with the lesson and then turn into mistake. But for us, it was know what you were doing and know when you don't know what you are doing. And what I mean by this is, for example, if you want to flip a house, you
Mhm.
need to first read 5 books on house flipping, listen to 100 podcasts, and most importantly, talk to people who flipped 100 houses or just flipped on the scale.
Mhm.
And with us, it was we learned it the hard way on one of our flips, one of our bigger flips, that was a little different from the previous flips that we made in a way that uh, it was more complex. It involved working with the city, working with engineers, architects. We had to pull permits, which a lot of investors don't do, but we just felt it was the right thing to do on the project. And we burned on that project because we didn't know enough. We didn't know how to deal with cities, so we had a lot of delays on our timeline. Our budget just skyrocketed very quickly because one of the things that, for example, City of Austin made us do is replace the entire wiring in the house that we
Oh,
didn't
wow.
plan on. Yeah, and that's because we opened up the walls, and if 50% or more of your sheetrock is down, they make you rewire the house, no matter if it's
Gosh.
grandfathered in or yeah. So, and that could have been easily avoided if we maybe talk to someone who's done this big of a flip before and say, hey, this is how you deal with this. This is how you deal with this, or even I was before I was a little scared of going into partnerships and partnering with strangers, but now I realize that this is actually a really good strategy of partnering with someone more knowledgeable, someone who can really bring value. And I oftentimes, like especially with newer investors, it's you can offer a small you can take a smaller share in exchange of just learning and avoiding doing bad deals, because in real estate, unfortunately, bad deals cost money, and sometimes it costs a lot of money. So I guess the biggest mistake is just not being knowledgeable enough in this, particular area. And the lesson is, knowledge should be at the core of your business. And if you don't know how to do something, then don't do it.
That's the best advice ever right there. If you don't know how to do something and you don't have a partner that knows how to do something, maybe don't do it. But I liked how you talked about that there are all these ways to learn. Just because you don't know how to do something doesn't mean that you can't ever do it. It just means you need to learn, or you need to find somebody that knows. So that's great advice. That's one of the best answers to that question that I've ever gotten.
Thank you.
Following on that, if you had to start over today, it's complete, no assets, no real estate experience, but you still knew what you knew today. If you had to start over today, what would you do differently, if anything?
Yeah. I'd say probably one of the biggest things that we would do differently would be to begin assembling a team and outsourcing particular functions out earlier.
Mhm.
So when we started off, we were the property manager, we were the contractor, we were, every single role you can think of, we gave it a go, and at times we juggled many of them. And I think we ended up compromising on, scale and learning and all of the other opportunity costs, networking, all these things we could have been doing in exchange for saving a few dollars on contractors, and so I think that'd probably be one of the things that we do earlier is we skip, going through the process of doing everything ourselves, being contractors, and just go right to trying to build a team, get the right people around us, get the right information around us, and focus on the bigger problems, the problems that, someone else isn't going to necessarily answer for you or serve on a silver platter for you, and tackle those.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think anybody can build a team at any stage in their career. So, and a team can be as simple as like you're talking about, Levi, having a contractor or having a property manager, people that are third-party professionals that you can hire and you don't have to manage. So I think it's easy to think of team means I have all these employees under me, but a GC is worth so much money, and their job, quite literally, the general contractor manages all those subs that are running around right there. So like that's what you're paying that person to do, is take that all off your plate. That's great advice there too. So y'all have done a lot, and I know we talked a little bit before the podcast, but what are your goals here in the future? What's next for you? Where are you going?
Yeah, so there is one pretty popular investor on Instagram. Probably a lot of listeners know her, but Investor Breed. And one of the things she says is think bigger sooner. And this quote is very much resonates with us because we've been investing in multifamily, we've been doing a lot of cool things, but I think before we didn't know that we could do bigger things because we saw that, okay, we're just not knowledgeable enough, or money would be the issue, or this and that. So with that said, we decided to think bigger sooner and move towards commercial real estate. We realized that we're not going to do it on our own. That's why this year and I guess at the end of last year and beginning of this year, we put networking as one of our, as a priority. We try to meet people in the commercial space. We try to find people to partner with on this bigger deal so we can learn from them. So, and we are particularly interested in self-storage, RV parks, and potentially land development. So that's where we are at now. We are currently learning as much as we can, networking with as many people as we can, putting procedures in place, trying to scale our lead acquisition systems.
I'd say the focus kind of shifted from, executing one-off deals in a linear fashion to how can we build a real estate business. And so I think with that in mind, we've been focusing on scale. How can we actually build out the protocols and procedures to move investments in volume? And so, with that entails building a team. And like you had said, it doesn't have to be employees, it can be something as simple as, getting involved with more third parties or bringing on a VA at $4 an hour to take care of, the legwork that could easily eat up a whole year's worth of our time. But hopefully, I think once we get all of these procedures going and operational, I think the thought would be to eventually shift to starting a fund. That's definitely something on our 3-year radar, I would say. Once we've got things operational and feel comfortable.
Awesome. Once you've done a few deals, no, that's awesome. I think it's that just what you said there, the 3-year radar. Having that longer term plan is so cool. You're saying, hey, this is where we're going. We're gonna figure out what we got to do to get there. So where you're going. You'll figure out the rest of it. That's really cool.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I think that's probably one of our strongest suits is like I feel like we can change on like a dime. Like we're willing to pivot and change strategies the moment we find a better course of action. I think we keep like a high level goal. Like I think Karina and I are very ambitious people, and we both would say that like our kingpin goal is to build a real estate empire. You know, we want to go to the top. We want to do it as big as we can in as much volume as we can. And I think when we started off in real estate, how we envision that happening is very different from how we envision it now. And I'm sure that in 3 years, how we envision it will be entirely different as well as we meet more people, you know, learn about new things when opportunities open up. So we have a plan right now, and I think we try not to plan too far out because we know that, you know, in 3 years we might be like, oh, well, this is way better and it'll get us there 3 times faster. So let's do that.
yeah, you've got a plan, you've got a direction, and you're headed towards it. That's cool. Do you have a business or mindset book that y'all like to recommend to people when they're thinking about getting into real estate investing?
Yeah, well, one of the, I guess, I would say one of the first books I read actually wasn't Rich Dad Poor Dad, but it was along similar similar lines, also by Robert Kiyosaki, Why Rich Are Getting Richer. And that book was just really important to me because it came at he talked a lot about historical crashes and market uncertainties and indicators and how to see them, or predict them, right? And he also talked a lot of similar concept to Rich Dad Poor Dad, but why savers sell losers, how taxes and debt make rich even richer. So by the time I started reading it, I already kind of had that mindset, but that just reaffirmed it to me. And I think it's just a really, really good book for anyone interested in just business mindset, real estate, and finance.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I
I've
think
not read that.
Yeah. No, I really liked it. Yeah. So definitely
Right.
recommend.
Yeah. I think if I had to pick one, it would probably be The Morning Miracle by Hal Elrod. Yeah, it's one I recently read,
Yeah.
but for some reason I just feel like this past year we weren't fully like living up to our full potential. You have it right
Well,
here.
this is a miracle morning. Yep. There's like I don't know how many different editions.
Yeah,
That's Miracle Morning for
about,
real estate. Yeah.
yeah, I think I read just like the general one, but maybe I should get the real estate specific one.
There's a Miracle Morning. I've read the Miracle Morning for real estate agents. I've read the Miracle Morning. I've read the Miracle Morning for entrepreneurs, I want to say. It's all the same concepts really, but there's just how they say it, you know, all really good stuff.
Yeah, no, exceptional. I think he like kind of instilled the 5 a.m. morning in me, and I feel like ever since I started waking up earlier and focusing on self-improvement, I've seen, I think, exponential growth in other areas. So I think focusing on myself actually has led to more results everywhere else. So I really do agree with that and resonate with it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with it. I do a Miracle Morning every morning, have for a couple of years. Like getting ahead of your day is so important. It's so easy just to wake up and let the day take hold. But when you get ahead and you set expectations for how the day is going to go and you get yourself right before the day starts, like you've got all the power. And that's just so important to do. It doesn't, I don't think everybody's like, I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. I wake up at 4:30 a lot of days. I wake up at 5:30 some days, but like if you have to be up at 8 and you get up at 7, you've just gotten ahead of the day, you know? So I think it's so important. Just do whatever you got to do to get ahead. Even if it's 30 minutes. So important.
Completely agree. And it sounds like you've got like a lot of experience in that space. So I'm glad to hear that you've like done it for a couple of years. That makes me feel much better about doing it for, you know, the indefinite future.
Yeah, no, it's so important. It makes such a difference. I hate this word or this phrase, but I absolutely was not a morning person. I sold my last business because I didn't want to get up in the mornings. I had a personal training business that I ran. I built into a nice little business, and I'm glad I sold it either way. But I sold that business partially because I'm like, you know what? Whenever a trainer calls out, I'm the first one that has to go in and take over that morning shift. And I'm tired of having to get up at 4:30 in the morning. What do you know? 7 years later, getting up at 4:30 in the morning. So
Yeah.
I
I think it's a big shift too, because it's like, I think for us, it's like there's a difference between getting up in the more early because you have to,
yeah,
and getting up early because you want to, because it provides value. You know,
yeah,
so I can totally see why getting up early, having to train people, that's like a job. It's like, man, that doesn't sound fun. I gotta wake up early. Whereas like I enjoy getting up early. Like I feel more accomplished. I, like you said, you get ahead of the day, you get so much more out of it. I think it provides value that is, you know, makes it just so much different than you have to do it.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Everybody needs to read that book. No matter what time of the morning you get up, if you get up an hour early or 30 minutes earlier than you need to, you're going to have just life-changing results. Um, that's an awesome one. I really like that. And I love all Robert Kiyosaki's books too. That totally changed my mindset on money and finance. Karina and Levi, what is the best way people can get a hold of you if they want to talk real estate or just learn more about what you're doing?
Well, the best way to probably reach me would be my Instagram at Karina Seidel _
Yeah. You can probably find me on LinkedIn is probably the main avenue, or on Instagram. I used to be like a no social media guy up until recently, when I found out I have to have a social media to,
Yeah.
you know, have a presence in real estate. So you can find me on LinkedIn, just Levi Seidel, LeviSeidel, or on Instagram, also just the same tag, Levi Seidel, no spaces.
Levi Seidel, no underscore, none of that. And
Nope.
Karina, you are Karina _ Seidel, right?
I'm Karina Seidel _ unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Someone beat it.
We'll have all this in the show notes for everybody too. But as always, you can follow me on Instagram at Jordan _ Moorhead, at Karina Seidel _ and at Levi Seidel. And of course, you know, obviously you find Levi on LinkedIn too, but for everybody listening, find that in the show notes. Make sure you follow Karina and Levi. And I can't wait to see what you guys are able to do here in the coming year.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jordan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Good to see you. All right.
Bye.